Hello everybody and welcome to another Transformers third party review. In today's video I am taking a look at the Open and Play Big Spring. Now Open and Play I believe is kind of an amalgamation of various different companies just to prove that they can give a masterpiece style figure for a very affordable price. I picked this up at TF Nation for 55 of my British pounds. He's a very good size. This is a very nice simplistic box. On the back there we have the figure in all three modes. We have our standard warnings on the back here in Chinese. I thought this used to be Open Play, but now it's Open and Play. I assume they wanted to make it more accessible. Now to open it up we just literally flip this open and there we have Springer in a plastic clamshell. Now you know my opinion on the plastic clamshells. I would have preferred a foam insert, but beggars cannot be choosers. And here we have him out of his plastic prison, and doesn't he look nice? Now, he's not spot on. This is another fine entry into the Springer Wars. Weapons wise, he does come with his rocket that he loads into the big catapult thing that they fire at Devastator, and he comes with his gun. Game pretty simple. Fairly lightweight but solid plastic. He also comes with the sword, which nicely mounts on his back. Has a very nice metallic blue tip. Now obviously he doesn't come with the Autobot logo as standard. I've put that on myself, hence the reason it's probably a little bit on the wonk. Now the biggest gripe that people have had with this figure is unfortunately the face sculpt. The head itself is a really good shape, it's very clean. The shoulders are a little bit off. Springer generally has, like Alan does, he has these sections at the side here, but the face it's just not right. Now unfortunately a few of you have asked if the masterpiece face of Inferno or Grapple will fit on Springer, and the answer is no. I've had to remove his eyes, which meant removing the back of his head, and it doesn't seem to be any way of getting this to fit. It would mean cutting down the head, cutting down the face plate, and I don't really want to be modifying any of the face plates. You know, I like to keep masterpiece figures intact. I mean, the expression itself is actually pretty good, but it's not worth ruining your masterpiece faces, in my opinion. You're not really losing or gaining anything. I would, however, like a third or fourth party company to make a face for this which actually looks like Springer, because the actual mold itself is really fun. And there we have him back to normal. Poor Springer. Now I'm not sure if this is official or not, as we don't get any instructions, but as a personal preference I like to turn this section around, bring it around to the side, collapse this hinge like so. This section goes in front, and there's a small tab which just lines up here. Bring this round to the back, and there we have him with his shoulders kind of more G1 inspired, I guess. He doesn't really hold his sword very well either. At least with like the Make toys or the Unique toys, they have the masterpiece style pegs to hold it in. This one not so much, but that's definitely a much better look for him in my opinion. Now his articulation is probably one of the strongest points of this figure. It is insanely good. The head can look up like that and down. We go left and right. We can get some tilt on there as well. The shoulders come out to the side, but this back section does tend to tip with it. We can go around on a soft ratchet. We have upper bicep rotation. We have a double jointed bend at the elbow, articulated wrists. They can go around. The fingers are pinned, but we do have an additional point of articulation for the trigger finger. The waist can rotate quite nicely. Now there isn't an abdominal crunch, but if you lift this section up, flip this piece under, and then tab it like that, we can then bring the chest downwards, and we can get that crunch forwards and backwards. We are left with this space underneath, but you can't see it when you have him posed like this. But this is meant to come out and tab in, although it doesn't really want to stay. It's a very loose joint. Legs can come up. I love how this section here hides away and disappears as you move the legs forwards and backwards. out to the side on a nice soft ratchet. We have kind of a mid-thigh rotation, that's different. And we have a nice bend at the knee coming down to the feet. We have individual toe articulation there. We have a bend forwards and backwards. We can tilt side to side, but we don't have any left and right on those. Now, it's not as natural as I would have liked, but he definitely has possibilities. And if you're actually pretty good at posing figures, then you could probably do a much better job than what I've done. But I am definitely happy that he can reach behind his head and grab his sword. That's a must for any sword wielding character. As far as faults go, I would really have liked a butterfly joint around those shoulders there, just so he could bring those arms right round to the front and hold the sword correctly. And the gap between the legs, that's the first point of the ratchet, and the next one is there. In my personal opinion, it's not too bad, but it's still wider than what I would have liked. I would have liked it to have been kind of around that point, but we can get away with just tilting the leg like so and giving it a fairly natural pose. Now, the nearest we're going to get to the sword wielding position is if we bring this forwards on the hinge. So rather than being at the back like you would if you had it standard, you bring it forwards on this hinge, rock it forwards like so, and then we can rotate the arm and then bring the hands together like this. And there we go, that's a very kind of shogun look to him. There's just nothing to keep it tabbed in securely other than sheer will and determination. And there we go, that is kind of his samurai-esque look. I like that, actually. That kind of works, especially if you've got the shoulders to the front position like I had them. I think you can actually get away with that position a lot more, and the arms don't look that unnatural, really. Now, height-wise, he does scale up pretty evenly with Unique Toys Alan, but Alan definitely has the Springer bulk and more show accuracy on his side. And I mean, he's a pretty dynamic figure himself. The shoulders are definitely what does it for me. The open and play is very nice, clean representation. But if you're on a budget and you want a Springer for your collection that doesn't really look out of place and you're not too fussed about that exact animation accuracy, then he definitely looks the part and blends in fantastically with your official and third-party Masterpiece figures. Right, to get him transformed up, we use guesswork because there is no instructions at all. It's kind of that's a bit of a bummer. This is actually a retail release and they do not come with instructions. So let's rotate the hands, open up the arms as you would with most Masterpiece figures, push it down underneath, open up this tab here, and that's going to come upwards and tab in, and this is going to go down and tab in on the outside. Compress the back guard against the shoulder, rotate the elbow, and there's a groove here and a tab here. Just using that double jointed elbow, you want to bring this round, line that up and push and tab it into place. Come to the backpack section, grab the sword holder, and we can just bring the screen out. What I do love about this is when we have the helicopter mode, we use this screen here. When we have the car mode, we can add the additional piece which widens the screen. That's a really nice touch. Come to the side panels, you want to just untab this piece here. You can then lift the chest away and just making sure that the arms are clear. This all swings around. The head pops inside, and as you can see, this is now going to come down. Make sure that this green tab is lined up and pushed back into place, tabbing in. Come to this yellow piece, flip this around and underneath, just tabbing that onto the base, and then bring this section backwards. And as we do so, there's a small green tab that's going to just slot in to the side there. Just push and collapse that into place. Come down to the legs and you want to just bend it at this upper thigh joint, and it just bends in half. You then want to come around to the back here and you want to tip the waist. Now as you tip the waist, you can push through from the underside, push this rocket section out. This is the fun piece. Bend these back on themselves like so. This here is actually going to split. If you look, this section here actually slides across to untab. So we can just slide this and suddenly, boom, and the peg is gone. This rear leg piece is just going to come untabbed, like so, and that actually rotates around. You then want to just rotate this back piece down, so you're left with something that looks like this. This sits away nice and snug on the inside of this leg. Collapse the toe into the foot, pull the feet together, and then push those around and onto the underside. These are going to just tab in together, which will help us tab everything in. You can then bring the waist around, and as we bring it around, make sure you straighten up these tab sections. This here is going to lift up and down, and there's a tab on the back here that's going to line up with here, and this is going to line up with here, so we can press that in, tab that in like so, and then this comes down and that's going to just tab in. Using this piece here on its double hinge, rock it backwards, that's just going to tab in. We can then bring the sections at the back upwards, and we can bring all of these bits together and push and tab everything in. You will need a nail or something just to get these side pieces out. Just going to pull those out. So just be careful, this piece here is rather sharp. And there's one last tab just underneath here, so you need to push those in. So these tab in here, and we also tab them in at the front, and that I believe is pretty much it. Not really sure where Springer's head is meant to go amongst all of that. Yeah, I guess looks okay-ish, doesn't it? I haven't really got much landing gear. Yeah, that should work. Let's put that down. Let's grab his sword and gently pry these sections apart. One goes left, one goes right, like this, and then we can place this into the holster section there, and whoop. There we go. There we have Spring in his helicopter mode. That's actually not that bad. Whee! I'm not sure if that's right. I really couldn't tell you, but it kind of works how I've done it. It looks similar to what there was in the photos. I've put his sticker on too far up. I should have put this lower down so it's not concealed in his vehicle mode, but we live and we learn. There you go. If you want to put a sticker on him, make sure you have him transformed up into vehicle mode first. The sword tips are actually quite sharp, so be wary of those. Now, scale wise, he's pretty good. He's definitely a masterpiece scale, although compared to Alan, he is absolutely tiny. Alan just completely overwhelms him, although this does have a very nice hint of the G1 toy nostalgia to it as well. We can plug his gun in on the side, but we don't have two guns, so it doesn't quite look right. That's another one of my gripes. You know what I'm like, I like things to be even, and this unfortunately is not. So let's take this out and let's get him transformed up into his car mode. To do this, first of all, let's take this section off here, and you want to untab this piece, flip this around. You then want to switch the hands around. Make sure that the hands are facing downwards. For some reason, you can switch it around. It doesn't tab in correctly if you have them the other way round. Now you want to rotate this, and this is going to come upwards, and there's a tab here, and this is just going to slide and tab into place. Make sure it's untabbed from the underside, and you want to rock this hinge, untab this yellow piece and flip it around and tab that back in. Untab this joint here to rotate this up and around like this, and this is going to come in and tab like so. We can then bring this piece back down, pushing on this hinge. That slides all the way to the front, and with those sections fully extended, we can now bring them in and just tab those in at the front and at the side of the chassis, lift up the windscreen section, pull it apart, left and right, and then this in theory should tab and then flip and over and then back, tabbing in on itself like so. That's actually quite clever. And then that's going to come down. We now have these two outer tabs which are going to tab in like so, and as you can see that's still in the wrong place. We can then come round to the tail fin section and slide these outwards so that this is now flush. You can then bend, push the middle fin inwards and bend this around. There's a tab underneath that's going to tab in on itself, and then around again, and that's going to tab in there, and then we can just move this out at the angle, and I believe that's it. I think that's how the back of the car looks. So I guess there we have him in his vehicle car mode. Please don't take this as gospel. Like I said, I am winging it, have no instructions with these, so we're kind of guesstimating our way around it. So yes, that's a car mode. It's not bad. Again, it's a very similar sort of scale with the Masterpiece. It does look very in keeping, albeit very Cybertronian. We can bring the gun in and that can sit on top. Yeah. Not a huge fan of how that looks, but I've made my point. I think we can flip these up, and I believe they're meant to be headlights, or they're meant to do something in his robot mode. Not entirely sure. They look better as kind of like fog lamps, don't they, in my opinion. It's a nice clean transformation. It's a lot less aggro in comparison to Alan. It's a lot less lumbersome, but at the same time there's a lot less to him. It's a very sleek design compared to Alan. It honestly does depend on what you're after from your Springer figure. I don't think you're going to be disappointed with this. I'm not a fan of the face sculpt. I would like to know how they work that sorcery online and make that Inferno or Grapple face actually fit him, because I could see no physical way of that going on there. I'm sure it's kind of photoshopped, or they've managed to cast another face of some description, but for now I'm happy with him. I'm going to continue to collect my Springers. I'm going to see if I can get every member of the Springer War and then compare them all, and we will then get rid of whatever ones we don't want. I do have the Toy World Springer, but there's no point in even bringing him into consideration because he's clearly not a Masterpiece attempt at Springer. There's nothing Masterpiece about him. And I can't remember exactly how Alan's car mode goes. I haven't got the computer to hand, but I'm pretty sure it's something like that, isn't it? It's a big chunky Tonka toy in comparison to the open and play version. I actually prefer the alt mode on the open and play version. It comes across as more of a kind of space buggy, that sort of vibe to it, and I like the way that this section all folds round and we get the extra piece in the windscreen. Neither of which are perfect though. Neither of them are an exact representation of the Generation 1 animation Springer, but both are very good stand-ins if you're looking for a Springer in your collection. And for the price of the open and play figure, I mean, that is a complete steal, even if you're just getting it for a very good action figure. So there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry if this review has been mainly guesswork. Unfortunately, that's what happens when you don't get any instructions. Very impressed with Open and Play's first attempt at a figure. Like I said, there is some history there. They had their fingers in other third-party pies, but this is a very good value for money figure. The face sculpt isn't quite right, and the alt modes aren't quite animation accurate, but it's a very good attempt, and if you're on a tight budget, this could definitely be the Springer for you. Until next time, from myself and Spring, thanks for watching. Goodbye.